consuming process of getting insurance. Will she find a solution? Enters MGen on my WhatsApp. Just a chat away, this service transforms the way you buy motor insurance. It's not just efficient, it's also extremely convenient. With MGen on my WhatsApp, Lucy can now focus on what truly matters: her journey, her ambition. Insurance simplified. Text HI to MGen on my WhatsApp to easily buy, renew, or validate your insurance. When it's worth it, it's worth talking about.
Monday, the 30th of June in the year 2025. It's the last day in this month. Tomorrow, effective, we're getting in the month of July. And after the month of July, we'll get into August. And in August, obviously, we begin the official countdown to the 2026 general elections. But thank you so much for being a part of tonight's edition of Diamond Live. My name is Andrew Omansa.
And I'm Jimwenga Chileshe. We get to wrap up the first half of the year 2025 and plan for the second half of the year. And then as we make our personal plans, we also have national plans as well. And this is obviously being seen through the administration that was given powers in 2021 to get to do so. And that is why on the show we get to break down some of these national conversations and get to hear from the different newsmakers, different experts to analyze the conversations. And today we'll be joined by political analyst Aaron Ngambi to do just that with us today.
So I'm talking about the Constitution amendment process. We know for a fact that last week President Hakainde Hichilema did defer the Bill 7, and just a day after he deferred this Bill 7, the Constitutional Court also rendered judgment guiding that the process must be halted. Many asking a very important question, that the coincidence between the President deferring the bill and the Constitutional Court having to halt the process breeds a lot of suspicion. But what is the right process for the Constitution to be amended? When is the right time? Those are some of the questions that we're going to be asking tonight with our guest. But like always, we begin the show with Today in a Snap. Well, today has been a day full of good news. If you look at it from a nationalistic perspective, just a few hours ago, the Energy Regulation Board getting to announce the revision of the pump price of petroleum, diesel, kerosene and jet A1 for the month of July 2025. And the new prices are as follows. For petrol now, it's at 28 kwacha. It was at 31 kwacha. For diesel, it's now at 23 kwacha, 13 ngwe. Kerosene is now trading at 21 kwacha, 98 ngwe. Jet A1 is now at 23 kwacha, 94 ngwe. And these are not the only products that have gone down. I was so shocked, Chimweka. I was going to buy Millimil 4 days ago. My thinking was that Millimil is around 400 kwacha. If I find it cheaper, I'll find it at 370 kwacha. Guess what? I found Millimil at 213 kwacha. The shop I went to, I was asking them, why is this Millimil cheaper? Is this Millimil okay or it's not okay? It said, no, it's okay. I said, why is it cheaper? No, the price of Millimil have gone down, and the market is selling, Millimil cheaper now. I missed that, all right? But also what's interesting enough is that yes, the many traders have reduced the milling meal prices, but the ZNS milling meal has not reduced. ZNS is still selling their milling meal at 230 kwacha. Now remember that to cushion the impact of the high prices of milling meal, government through the Zambia National Service was selling that product at 230 kwacha. Now that these other products have reduced, now this, and I'll give an example of a very popular milling meal, which is Pembe. Pembe now is very cheap. It was at 375, and now it's around 245 to 215 in other places. But the one which was much more cheaper has maintained the price, and so many questions need to be asked there. But things seems to be cheaper. But also we saw in the last few days how the kwacha was doing so well against major convertible currencies. In this regard, the dollar it reached at some point 22 kwacha to a dollar, and so we're seeing some positive shift in terms of how the economy is performing. Just a few days ago there was a projection that the economy by the end of this year will grow by 6% in terms of GDP, and so you can see that positive outlook in terms of how the economy is responding to what is being done. I don't know what is being done, but the economy is responding very well.
Yes, we've also seen, when we talk about inflation and our performance, we've also seen an improvement from that particular side. But even just with this particular decision here, the expectation is that the cost of living will go down. What we tend to see in our country, and if you look at the dynamics, it's very rare for commodity prices to reduce, especially if some of the key indicators have been reduced. In this case, we're looking at the cost of fuel here, and next people will be talking about their bus fares and so many other costs that people get to incur on a daily basis. But generally, what we'll be expecting from this is the cost of living to go down. We know that the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection, JCTR, get to put out the basic needs and nutrition basket, and looking at the cost of living for a family of 5, which is the typical measurement. And the expectation is that we'll see a drop in this, and that's what people want to see, the reflection into people's daily lives. I've seen a lot of people celebrating this, and you can understand why, because fuel is a major aspect of our economy in terms of driving the costs around doing business, and also for people to access certain commodities. So when we see this reduction in the fuel pump prices, you understand why people will be happy, because it's not just the motorists, the people who drive and own cars who will be happy. Others might just see it from that perspective, but there's so many, the impact is much greater than that, because we're also looking at those in business as well, making this reflective onto the customers and consumers.
Well, that's right, Simweka. But also, not only this that we're talking about, another big historical event happened today. The President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, was commissioning 100 megawatts Chisamba solar plant. It's the biggest ever that we've ever put up as a country. In fact, it's one of the biggest in sub-Saharan Africa, excluding South Africa. And now the most important thing is that this is adding to the national grid. The projection is that this is going to power over 30 to 50,000 homes. But also, just during the construction of this power plant, there's over 1,300 workers that are being employed just at this plant, and 98% of these
from the local communities
were the local communities. But also, it's good to see how then we are responding to this energy crisis we're in as a country. President Hakainde Hichilema set up a very ambitious goal that by the end of 2025 we must have produced 1,000 megawatts of power. And so if we're going to subtract 100 from 1,000, that gives us now a deficit of 900. And he believes so much that by the end of 2025 we're going to achieve this goal. But also he makes mention in his presentation, just in the background as you're able to see it, that there's so many places that have been identified where they're going to be putting up different solar plants. Another 100 is coming in Serenge, another 50 is coming in Kitwe, and so many other solar plants are coming to be able to cushion the impact that has the lack of rains in the last season did bring us here, and just addressing the energy crisis that we have in our country. Quite a good news for our country.
Yes, I mean the construction started on the 10th of July, so in about 11 days it would have marked a year since the construction began, and 10 months of this construction. Of course, they also had to be a time before the commissioning that we go to see by President Hakainde Hichilema. And like you've mentioned, over 1,300 jobs during this particular process. But even just with the project being commissioned now and being in operation, we're expecting about 100 jobs, 40 that would be direct and about 60 which would be indirect as well. So you see a number of people still benefiting from this as well. But looking at it from the national level, we're talking about, I mean, the idea from the president is that we need about 9,000 megawatts. Yeah. And he made that target of 1,000 before the end of this year. Tomorrow we begin the second half of 2025, so it'll be interesting to see how we'll go in attaining this particular target that has been set. But also more so from the energy mix and diversifying our energy sector, because for a long time, as we've been talking about and as we know, there's been a lot of reliance on hydroelectric power supply, but now we need more climate resilient solutions as well, and this is where now we get to see the solar power plants coming in and being able to do that, because we've seen what has happened with the reliance on hydropower. When we have situations like a drought or we don't have rainfall as a country for a period of time, we get to suffer the consequences for a very long time. So we're looking at more resilient solutions, and solar has been already discovered as being the way to go. But what also stood out, Andrew, from today as the president was speaking, was him also addressing issues of power exports. He did talk about that today, and he mentioned that it's important that we have a balance as a country between the exportation and, of course, what we need here internally. I know many have frowned upon the exportation because here in Zambia we have an electricity crisis, a power crisis. And people want that electricity to be here and not to be exported. But the president spoke about it today, saying there's revenue that we generate from this exportation that is much needed for the country's general revenue, and that is why we still see the exports happening as they are. But he did emphasize that definitely we need that balance where, yes, we're exporting, but at the same time, the demands of this country are met. And people obviously make comparisons. What's happening with our neighbors, Zimbabwe? Obviously, we share the Kariba Dam in terms of hydroelectricity power generation. And when people hear of how the electricity situation is in that country compared to what we are currently experiencing, I know there's many concerns that will come through from members of the public, but the president just felt the need to also touch on this because there's two borders around our electricity supply. Further from that, even with this power plant being now commissioned, what we also see is anything that will be excess will be exported.
That's true.
And looking at us also being a hub within our sub-Saharan region.
Well, of course, we are setting ourselves up as a power hub, for electricity, and this is one of the ways that we can be getting, our foreign exchange, as a country. But as we are speaking, Chimweka, it reminds me of what the chairman of ZESCO and what the MD of ZESCO always says, that not knowing that the solution to our power challenges, the solution to our energy crisis is actually in the sun. We are in an era where, technology is meeting with nature. Who knew that the sun, could one day could be one source that we could rely on as a country to give us electricity? And today it has proved that the sun indeed, is a solution to our energy crisis as a country. And like you said, tomorrow we're getting into the second half of the year, and obviously government has set up itself an ambitious, program that it has rolled out to have 1,000, kilowatts of power by by December of 2025. A number of projections were put up by Minister of Information and Media, Honorable Cornelius Ngwethe, of when power, when load shedding would end, and he had projected that by June, July, we'll begin to see light at the end of the tunnel. But this is not the case. Obviously, now we are we're getting into stage 10. At the moment, people are having only 5 hours, of electricity, and projects like this really reignite hope in the lives of many Zambians to possibly see a change in terms of the number of hours they're going to be seeing power for. Well, we're going to take a break. When we're back, we speak with political analyst in Aaron Ngambi. We're going to be speaking all things constitutional amendments and the decision that came through from the court to halt the process, but also he's going to be speaking into the decision by the president to defer the bill until wider consultations are done.
Chop some onions. Ah, pinto. Into the pot. Delicious. Sprinkle some spring onion.
Have you heard about the lady who knows how to cook? She makes the best noodles with a special look. She adds little veggie, spices and meats, and serves them hot and fresh down in every street. Mama Binta noodles, hey, you make me smile. Mama Binta noodles, tasty every time. Mama B is making Binta tonight. Mama B is making Binta tonight. Mama B is making Binta tonight. Mama B is making Binta tonight.
Good, better, Binto.
Pascal's showing his boss the efficient new technology they've installed. She is pleased, but now she's asking, why is that still there? Pascal explains that the wells can store many, many messages. The boss is not so pleased anymore. If you haven't upgraded your contact center yet, it's time to get business done better with MTN Business.
Is 1, 2, 3, and all my clothes are squeaky clean.
Quick to remove the dirt and stains, and a fresh fragrance remains.
Never seen nothing like it. That's exactly why I like it.
So whether color white or black, it brings a new right back.
Aloha.
Asilwela ukunqoba kuphela, kepha silwela ukwakha isizwe esinohlonze. Sekunjalo.
To know where we're going, we must remember where we're coming from. Boom. Never forget home.
Welcome to an electrifying new epic of agricultural shopping. Nestled in the bustling Lusaka showgrounds, the Nemchem Agri Division is more than just a store. It's the lighthouse of advancement, searching for top-notch biosecurity, cleaning and pest control solutions. Attention! Local businesses, your quest ends here. Get ready for a thrilling journey in agricultural retail. The future begins at Nemchem Agri Division, your supermarket for superior quality. The revolution of agricultural shopping starts now. It's about empowering your business and nurturing your community. Call us today or visit our shop at the Lusaka Showgrounds.
The meaning of life is not to simply exist, but to move ahead. To rise up and achieve. To conquer. Introducing Kung Fu Energy Drink, your push for the next conquests. Kung Fu Energy Drink. Master the power.
The biggest stage for women's football in Africa is coming to Diamond TV this July. It's the Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations. Watch Africa's finest female footballers, including Zambia's very own Copper Queens, battle for continental glory. Starting Saturday, July 5th, 2025.
And this time, it's an opportunity and it has been hidden. And it is the Copper Queens.
Do not count them out.
Witness the goals, the skill, the saves, and expert analysis live on Diamond TV, DSTV channel 271, and GoTV channel 20.
Today,
start big
with Victory
Cornflakes.
Victory Cornflakes.
The end of your journey will be big. Stay on your feet, chase to achieve. Give it your all and just believe that it's gonna be big when you start with Victory Cornflakes. Start with big today. Victory Cornflakes. Remember to always keep it, do it. In whatever you do it. Keep it in whatever you do.
Today, the best maize grain Zambia has to offer are perfectly toasted into golden flakes that pack a big crunch. Today, start big with Big Tree Cornflakes.
Well, thanks so much for still staying with us. You can be a part of the program by calling us on the number that is on your screen, but also you can take advantage of our social media platform. That's a Diamond TV Online to drop your comments in the comment section. Now, President Hakainde Hichilema last week directed the Minister of Justice, Honorable Princess Kasune, in consultation with Parliament to defer the ongoing process of Bill number 7 of 2025 to allow for broader consultations with the Zambian people. Now, this decision underscores the government's commitment to fostering a participatory and consensus-driven process in shaping transformative legislative reforms. The President's guidance follows further consultations with the church mother bodies and over 30 civil society organizations held at State House on Tuesday, the 24th of June 2025, where diverse perspectives were shared. Now, to ensure additional stakeholder input, the President has directed the Minister of Justice to work closely with the church, civil society, and other stakeholders to review the current roadmap and propose amendments. Now, this is premised on the President's duty to listen to the citizens. The presidential directive was followed by a ruling from the Constitutional Court which ordered that the process must be halted. We discuss this further with our guest tonight, Mr. Aaron Ngambi, who is a political analyst, Zambian, based in the US, but is in the country to deal with some of these issues that are affecting our people. Thank you so much, Mr. Ngambi, for making time to be a part of the program.
Thank you for having me.
What is your reaction to the President's decision to defer Bill number 7 of 2025?
It's a mixed reaction. Number one, I think that it's the right step in the right direction. Of course, there's this perception now that the President is listening to the people. But secondly, the reaction is that this is what should have been done in the first place. I think there were voices or people that were saying, this process is not consultative, this is not the way to go about doing these things. But we saw the President go around the country. I think the first time he spoke about the constitutional amendments was in Kasama, I think on Women's Day. And he championed the idea of, yes, we need to make amendments, we need proportional representation, as he called it then. Have specific number of seats for women and youth in Parliament. So I think that perhaps the President has come to realization, or perhaps he has now all of a sudden started to listen to the people, because since he made that public announcement in support of the amendments to the Constitution, there were many voices. I think if my memory serves me correctly, at one point even Paramount Chief Bezeni spoke about how this has not been consultative, So what took us so long from the time that the president spoke in favor of the constitutional amendments to him making this decision now? So it's a mixed reaction. Of course, it's the right thing to do now, but it should have done much earlier.
Do you think it's just mere coincidence that a day after he made that guidance to the Minister of Justice, a day after we saw a constitutional ruling that was speaking towards the same matter? Because now what we're seeing is his colleagues within the political fraternity and some members of the public calling for his resignation, calling for him to be impeached for breaching the Constitution, because according to the ruling there, it didn't really have the tenets of a constitutional amendment process.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about whether it's a coincidence or it's not a coincidence. I'm not privy to any other information except what's in the public. Of course, the president deferring this process, and also the next day the Constitutional Court brings up a ruling that is in favor of the people who are opposing the process. So I'm not sure what has happened and what has informed those two decisions as of now. But definitely I've heard people talking about how the president has to be impeached. They've talked about how the president needs to resign. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I saw in the newspaper tabloids, I think it was President Harry Kalaba of Citizens First who's saying the president has to resign, and some are calling for his impeachment. And then also, I think just yesterday or day before yesterday, the Learned Counsel, John Sangwa, talked about how the president now is not, should not be allowed to run for a second term because he has breached the Constitution. So this is interesting to see what's unfolding, but of course people need to speak and hear the voices. People need to have a discussion around this. I am not an expert on the Constitution. I'm not a lawyer myself, and so I may have my own opinions and interpretation of what's going on, but definitely the political aspect of this, because any constitutional judgment has political implications. So the political implication of this is that basically the Constitutional Court, has gone against what government wanted to do. Therefore, how will government go to the people now and explain that, okay, we were wrong, we should have listened to you in the first place? That's the political implication of what's going on.
Do you think then the decision or the ruling from the Constitutional Court gives us an idea that perhaps there's separation of powers in how the three arms of government operate?
Absolutely. I think this ruling from the Constitutional Court should give a lot of Zambians confidence in the judiciary. It is not easy to see such kind of a judgment come through when you have a heated debate, bordering issues pertaining to changing the Constitution. And remember, we're just about less than 1 year, 6 months before the next elections. And there were people that were talking about really the timing of this process. Why now? Why didn't the UPND or the government begin this process in 2022, right after winning the elections? Why are they in a hurry to do it now? So when you think about all those things, I think that what the Constitutional Court has done is that it's given confidence back to the people to say, we're an independent body, we're here to listen to what the people are saying, and this is what the judgment is, and it's what we've delivered to the people.
But what do you think? With all these calls for his resignation, for his impeachment, what are your thoughts on this? Because, I mean, as a Republican president, you are expected to uphold the Constitution.
That's true. Well, all of that may be calls that people are making because of being informed about, certain aspects of the provision of the Constitution. So anyone is able to call for the impeachment of the president, which is fine. And some are just politicking as well. I mean, whether it's wrong or not, it's fine. People have the right to do that. But the question is that, what is feasible? Is this really practical? Can the president be impeached because of, Bill 7, this whole entire process that has not been constitutional according to the Constitutional Court? And the answer is that is for the birds, because you need 2/3 majority in Parliament to impeach the president. And so I can't imagine or think for 1 second if there'll be any UPND members of Parliament that would vote to impeach President Hakainde Hichilema. And you need some of them to do that for you to get 2/3 majority.
So in court, the Attorney General was depending on Article 79 as as basis for why they are, amending this constitution, I was seated with the minister responsible for, for justice just on Sunday on cost, and she was saying they didn't break any law. Yes, they're going to follow the guidance of the Constitutional Court, but there was no law that they broke because they followed what the constitutional provisions, provide for. Article 79 is very clear that the executive can be the movers of a constitutional amendment process.
Yeah, when you look at the judgment that was delivered by the Constitutional Court, it talks about how this entire process has violated almost 10 articles or clauses in the Constitution. Okay, so yes, according to Article 79, they may not have broken the law per se, but they were not in conformity with the other provisions of the Constitution, those 10 articles that are cited by the Constitutional Court. But also what is very important is what the Constitutional Court said in that ruling. They said this was not done in the spirit of the Constitution, in the spirit of the people. So the executive may be the movers of some of these motions, but really when it comes to the Constitution, you have to go back to the people. It needs to be bottom-up rather than top-down process. And there are other things that, in my view, the government omitted in the process of trying to come up with this Bill 7. Of course, there was no Act of Parliament which, called for a national dialogue or a commission of inquiry or something like that, or constitutional commission to actually put these things in motion. So it is one thing to break the law, and it's another thing to skip or ignore provisions of the law. So I think that the Constitutional Court is very clear on the 10 things that the government did not do in following through, even though they did not break any law.
At the height of this debate for these proposed constitutional amendments, one of the things that was very consistent from civil society organizations, even the church themselves, was the timing of these, of these amendments. According to you, in fact, the UPND, in submission was saying that there's no such a thing that a right time to amend the Constitution. But from your perspective, when do you think is the right time, for enough time to build consensus and amend the Constitution?
Yeah, I think the word is consensus. You need enough time to consult widely, go across the country, and that's why in the past we've had Constitutional Commission reviews. Government has sent out representative and experts to talk to the people and come up with what people think is problematic or needs to be changed in the Constitution. So in terms of the timing, and this is a thing that most people who spoke against the process, they were worried about the timing of itself. Now, let me take you back. Before 2021 elections, the UPND ran on a platform that promised change of fixing the economy and other things. And the Constitution was not at the centerpiece of what was promised to the Zambian people. They didn't say we're going to deliver a new Constitution. Like Michael Sata said, in 90 days I'll deliver a new Constitution if I'm elected. So I think that perhaps maybe even that's why it took them longer in defense of the UPND. Perhaps that's why it took them longer to come to a point such as this a year and a few months before the elections, and then begin the process of trying to change the Constitution, amend the Constitution, for lack of a better term. But if that was a priority, it should have started much earlier, because if it started much earlier, it could have provided us with the opportunity for people to express their views and views to be collected countrywide. I want to make a reference to a program that I listened to, and that was Honorable Winter Kavimba. I think he featured on Millennium Radio, one of these platforms. And he challenged the Minister of Foreign Affairs now, but he was Minister of Justice, Honorable Himbe, when he started this process. Honorable Winter Kavimba said to him that we're hearing these views that people made submissions to the Ministry of Justice about the constitutional things that needs to be changed in the Constitution, about the amendment process. And Honorable Winter Kavimba said, but those submissions have not been made to the public. We don't know who made these submissions. Are they individuals, groups, civil society? But also, if these submissions are actually there at the Ministry of Justice, can you provide those submissions to the public? Can we see them? Even if they'll cost us 50 kwacha or 500 kwacha, he said, we'll pay for it. Okay. So this is where, when you talk about how the process was flawed, this was the genesis, the beginning of how things were not done right.
When we speak of the time, the president, again, during his meeting with the civil society organizations, brought up a point of, he was wondering why there seems to be a lot of resistance towards his administration wanting to amend the Constitution. And he made reference to what has happened in the past. And he said all three political parties that have formed government have amended the Constitution. And there have been amendments that have taken place in an election year. He made reference to 1991, he made reference to 1996, made reference to 2016, which have all been election years. And this particular amendment is not even happening in election year. It's happening before an election year, but there's a lot of resistance and sensitivity around an election year. Do you think that the resistance is being unfair on President Hakainde Hichilema?
I don't think so. I think the president is missing it because, honestly, even those people, voices that have spoken against the process now, their contention is not that we should not amend the Constitution at all. That is not the point. But the point is that the process from the beginning has lacked transparency. The process from the beginning has lacked wide consultation and consensus. Those are the sticky points. So if the president can come and tell me and people and convince them to say, but we've been very transparent from the beginning. This is what we did, this is what we did, and this is where we are. You give an example of the civil society organization meeting that he had at the State House. If you ask me, that should have happened at the beginning of the process. We didn't see that. And in fact, I heard some arguments from the UPND camp. Some people were making this argument that the provisions that are suggested in Bill 7 are non-contentious, which is something that they told us, including the Minister of Justice. But also, they were making reference to these are submissions that were even done in the Monakatri Commission Review Commission. These were submissions from the Mungomba. They're saying, but these are things that Zambians have always wanted. But honestly speaking, in 1996, when there was a Constitutional Review Commission, I wasn't even eligible to vote at the time. So, and the people who probably made those submissions at that time to the Constitutional Review Commission, some of them are not even here today. So why would you take provisions or articles or things that were spoken about in these other constitutional reviews before, rather than all of a sudden starting a process that is all encompassing?
We made reference earlier to State Counsel John Sangwa and some of his submissions around this. But one of what he did welcome the deferment of Bill 7. But also said and mentioned that it's not enough. What they were actually hoping for is a withdrawal of the bill. Do you think that this bill needs to be withdrawn altogether, or is this deferment sufficient enough?
I think that a few days ago, I think it's not even been a week or maybe less than 2 weeks, I appeared on Diamond Live virtually and I made a statement that this bill should be withdrawn. That's the word I used. I don't think that this deferment is enough in itself. What the government wants to do is start a process that builds confidence in the people, that people know we're with the government from the beginning. And let's talk about the word deferment. When you defer something, you probably have a date in mind when you'd want to do it. Okay, this thing has been deferred until July, until December. But this deferment doesn't seem to have a time frame. We don't know for how long this Bill 7 has been deferred for. The president hasn't been clear about that. So that also will cause a lot of questions about people interested in this process. So I think that the bill should be withdrawn completely. Because, the problem with this bill also is that it's reminding people of Bill 10. You know how the Zambian people fought Bill 10 and one of the striking things that I've actually observed is that through this entire process, the people, the civil society organization, the churches were saying one thing, and those who are apologists for the government and those people who are in the government or who are representative of the government were saying the opposite. And one of the people that I listened to carefully and observed is some individuals from the UPND media team, not from the government media team, the UPND party media team. And a fellow was saying, whether people like it or not, will amend the Constitution. This reminded me of Bill 10 and the days of the PF. There were people in government then during the PF that projected themselves as humble, listening to the people, but at the same time, you had completely the opposite of people that were representative of those leaders who were very arrogant. I mean, this is playing out right now, even with Bill 7. That's how it reminds people of Bill 10.
The Constitutional Court has given a guidance that for us to have a legitimate, process and constitution-making amendment process, there needs to be a technical team run by independent experts that must be put together that are going to collect submissions, countrywide. Do you think that we still have enough time before the 2026 elections if that team was put together and they begin to collect submissions? Do you think we'll still have enough time for us to build consensus before the next elections?
Well, I think the timing has to be the core of the people. If the people says, yes, give us a technical committee now and let's begin the process, it doesn't matter if it's conclusive before the elections or after the elections. So the question here is that who's driving this agenda? What is this all about? Does government really want a new amended constitution before 2026 elections, or do the people want that? So if we answer that question, then it answers...
But do you see the appetite by government to have this constitution amended before the next elections?
I just told you that one of the UPND media teams, I don't know if it's the director, who once said that we'll give the Zambian people this amended bill, whether they want it or not.
Well, let me get back to the point of this. When you say the call of the people, this has also been another contentious conversation. And we've been asking this question to the various stakeholders who have been engaged on this particular discussion. When you say the call of the people, what exactly do we mean? Because it seems representation here is another challenge. Those who are for this argue that they also have sections of society who agree and are also people, and those who are disagreeing are also people. So what is the criteria for the people?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I'll give it to you this way. Even during Bill 10, I'll make reference to Bill 10 because it's very recent and it's fresh in the minds of the people. I think Bill 10 fell by, I don't know how many votes, very a small number of votes in Parliament. So you can tell that even that bill, people were divided. There are people that have suggested that this bill should go back to members of parliament, and then members of parliament should hold meetings, town hall meetings in their constituencies with people. Okay, so they can put up flyers, they can call for a meeting, they can say we are meeting at this church, on Saturday, we're meeting here, and then let the general public come and talk about the issues that maybe there are sticky issues in Bill 7, or talk about the entire process of the constitution-making process and how that should be conducted. Those are the people. Those are the people. And if the members of parliament feel that their constituency are for or against this, then they can come forward and tell us what they're thinking. The problem is that we have our politics in the country is such that our members of parliament are sponsored by political parties, and so they have to toe the line of the political parties that they represent. Sometimes the political party, what they want, especially the party in government, may be at loggerheads with what the people, even who elected them 4 years ago, want at that time. And so we have to be sensitive to that. And so there is a way that we can establish who are the people. The people is basically directly in contact with the peasants, the mothers and the fathers, and the young people, the youth that are affected by these issues.
The phone lines are now open. You can come through and call us and give us your contributions and questions on the number that is reflecting on your screen. Mr. Ngambi, do you believe the contents of Bill 7 were timely, particularly in the attempt to address gaps in the current constitution? I'll give you very practical examples of how the Electoral Commission, for example, says that they're losing in excess, they've lost from 2021 up until date, in excess of 375 million, kwacha just on by-elections. And one of the things that we wanted to fix in this bill is to ensure that, we fix this component of by-elections, but also fixing Article 52 that calls for resignations of candidates just before an election. Don't you think Bill 7 was really addressing the critical issues that we need to be addressed before the next elections?
Mr. Monsa, democracy is not a business, and there's a cost to democracy, okay? And, growing up, my father used to say to me, you don't solve all the problems, you solve the major problems. Okay, so if by-election, the cost of by-elections was really a problem for the people, then well and good. Let's solve that. Let's talk about it. Okay, but you talk about resignation of candidates before an election. This is the same constitution that ushered in the United Party for National Development in 2021 in August. They won the elections under this constitution. Did anyone resign to cause a presidential by-election, for example? We didn't see any of that. If it's not broken, you don't fix it. I don't think that you don't make laws by anticipating what might happen tomorrow because we have this law, so this can happen tomorrow. No, that's not the way things are done.
But actually, isn't that the opposite of it? Because one of the characteristics of a good law is it should stand the test of time. That means you really have to anticipate what could happen in the future, isn't it?
Then we'll be amending the Constitution every day because there's so many scenarios that we can anticipate about different clauses in the Constitution. Okay? In fact, I learned through my limited knowledge about the Constitution. I took a constitutional law course in one of my political science classes. In fact, even the law itself, for it to pass, it doesn't have to be moral. Like, again, our quote Honorable Winter Kavimba likes to say that you don't legislate attitudes. Okay? But the law needs to have political will to pass. That's it, whether it's a good or a bad law. It just needs political will for it to pass. It doesn't have to be moral. So these are the issues these are debates and discussions that people need to have going forward. But again, democracy is not a business. It is costly. There's a cost to it. And perfecting democracy is work in progress. And we can do that going forward. But I think the bottom line is that if something is not broken, why are you trying to fix it? But if we've had problems with specific clauses in the Constitution and the Zambians feel they need to be addressed, yes, well and good, let's address them.
If we look at the content itself and getting back to the issue of the resignation and looking at it from the anticipation point of view, and I remember the president brought this up also in the National Assembly. It should have been when he was addressing the country on the principles and values being applied, the application of principles and values. He mentioned something to the effect that you could have even a sitting president being in office much longer than they should be, and it's owing to such gaps in our constitution where somebody can actually resign. We've seen these things happen before, whether it's at parliamentary level and so on, and the fear is that when it gets to national level, we will have a major crisis. And it's something that could actually happen. Whether these people will be deliberately sponsored or they'll do it out of their own reasons, there's a possibility of doing that. And the argument that is coming through from the Minister of Justice is that why this should happen now is so that we avoid some of these issues before the next election. And that's been one of the reasons they're saying this should happen now.
When Bill 10 was being discussed before it was tabled before Parliament, you recall that there were a lot of people that were for it and against it, and that we had a lot of discussion at that time around Bill 10. I remember specifically what President Hakainde Hichilema used to say about Bill 10. He used to say that, of course, there are good clauses in Bill 10. There are good things in this bill, but even in these good things, there's poison. There are some elements to this bill that are not good. Okay. So the question now is, we go back to the Zambian people, how do they feel about Bill 7? Is it because it has good things and some of the bad things in it? Why has it been deferred? Is it because maybe all of it is not necessary or we shouldn't anticipate laws before they happen? Or is it because it's a good bill, there's some good things in there, but there are also some bad things that people have concerns about? We can only establish that if there's wide consultation. If the process is transparent, if it's flowing, Zambian people are contributing and are part of the discussion.
And for you, looking at the contents of this bill, 13 amendments that the minister calls non-contentious, do you think the contents of this bill are really good from your endpoint? And do you think these 13 proposed amendments are not contentious?
I don't think that all of them are non-contentious. I think there are some few things in there that people say, let's talk about that. Also, secondly, I think that, in my own opinion, there's some clauses or some proposed articles in that Bill 7 that to me looks like this is just a step away from I question the intentions of some of these clauses. What is the spirit of the drafters of this Bill 7? What are they up to with these specific clauses? So there are certain clauses like that. I'll give you an example. I think there is one that talks about removing term limits for mayors and chairpersons. Okay? So the question is, why do that now? Is there a problem with the mayors and chairpersons just serving for 2 terms? Okay, we have members of parliament who have no term limits at all. So I have to sit down and ask myself, what is the spirit of the drafters of this bill? What are the intention? What are they trying to achieve with this specific provision that's in the bill? So those are subject to different interpretations and different things. But I think that there are elements in Bill 7 that some people can deem as to be good and mean well, and there are others that people think the intentions may not be all that well.
Others have come out to, advise this government that they must be focusing their attention on fixing the economy as opposed to dealing with issues that, well, others would say are not very important. At this time, probably people think that issues of bread and butter are what's important. What, is your view of people that feel what is important now is fixing the economy?
I agree with them. I started off by saying that the UPND told us that Bali will fix it. And this was largely in reference to the economy of the country. Because prior to the 2021 elections, the country was in bad shape. The debt, skyrocketing, the high cost of prices, in terms of commodities that people use in their homes. The cost of living was high, and so many other things. And so when the President Hakainde Hichilema ran on that motto, Bali will fix it, or that slogan, the people understood and knew that he's coming in to fix the economy. And it's my view that if President Hakainde Hichilema just fixes the economy or focuses all his concentrated effort on fixing the economy, I don't think that he'll have much difficulties come election time. Because people would go back and say, oh, he told us that he'll fix this. Look, this is where things were. This is where we are now. And there would be no need for us to even worry about or anticipate anything that will come out of a constitutional gap.
I'll argue that if we're talking about fixing the economy, what we'll also be looking at is ensuring that our treasury is safe and we're not losing money as a country. And what has been observed, getting back to the Constitution, we're just from hearing from the Electoral Commission of Zambia, for the tune of 375 million kwacha being spent, which could have been avoided. Others would argue that it still gets back to the Constitution. If you can fix that, you are closing a loophole where you're losing money as a country.
Well, that's a fair argument to make, but also we should look at how many by-elections have happened under this new Dawn administration. And maybe the question further would be, could those by-elections could have been avoided or not? So there are those angles that we can look at. I think that we've seen quite a number of by-elections, and that is costing the treasury, like you have said. Is changing the constitution or certain provision, the constitution, the answer to that? I don't know. The Zambian people have the last say on that. We have to convince the Zambian people. You've given us a figure from the Electoral Commission of Zambia. This is how much we spent, how much we lost as a treasury, as a country through the treasury during this period of time. Do we have an accounting of how much we have lost since 2021 August up to now in terms of by-elections? So all of these are things that people have to discuss freely. Now, I must throw this caveat in to explain that, unfortunately, it feels like people are hesitant to engage in any kind of discussion, even online. Maybe it's the cyber security law, I don't know. But people are kind of very silent on these issues. People should be encouraged to speak. Because if people don't speak to the government now in terms of dissent, in terms of agreeing with them, it could be the constitutional issues, it could be anything, then the government can easily assess and feel where the people are. And it would not have taken us this long for President Hakainde Hichilema to defer this Bill 7. Okay? But if people feel like they might be in trouble by speaking out or saying certain opinions that they have, then the only option the people have is to express themselves in the ballot.
In the ballot. Just hold your thought there. We have a caller, Katumba, calling us from Solwezi. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello?
Good evening.
Oh, good evening, thank you.
Very well. Go ahead with your question or contribution this evening.
Okay, I would just love to contribute on that coincidence, the one you mentioned about the Concord judgment and the withdrawal by the president.
The deferment.
I think that coincidence was too much. I don't think there was separation of powers there. Maybe I beg to maybe just disagree with the coincidence. There was no separation of powers from the president and the Concord. Then my other submission would be just to withdraw and not defer the bill 7, because consultations have not been effective. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much for coming to Katumba.
And just on that, and this has been a long-going conversation in our country. We talk about the separation of powers and how ideally that's the expectation, that's what we know, but we still have sections of society that don't think we have the true separation of powers, and some of the organs and wings of government not being independent. What are your thoughts on this? And obviously this comes with the backdrop of we have the president who gets to appoint some of these people who lead these institutions and even some people we have in the judiciary.
And I want to sympathize with people that think that this doctrine of separation of powers is more theoretical than practical. And the reason for that is because we know the president appoints judicial officers, High Court judges, Supreme Court judges, Constitutional Court judges. The president belongs to a political party, and that he's the president of a political party, and that political party, more than half the times, they're the majority in parliament, in the National Assembly, in the legislature. So if government really wants to push some kind of changes or laws, it is quite, it's not very complicated. It's quite possible that the president can get, and his party, they can get their way through what they want to do in parliament, because the majority of the members of parliament belongs to the political party, depending on what the numbers are, of course. So that's where people feel like this is more theory rather than practical. But what I meant by saying that this is giving people confidence and this could be a sign of separation of powers is that you look at the Constitutional Court judges. The president added a few Constitutional Court judges, of course about 3, to the bench, and he's appointed some. And some, of course, were let go for whatever reasons. But even though those were appointed by the sitting president, President Hakainde Hichilema, and even though the Constitutional Court charges, are appointed by the executive, theoretically, they have delivered a judgment that is against what the ruling party wants to do. I talked about members of the UPND media team, some of them who were saying publicly that we will amend the constitution whether, because there's this perception, unfortunately, the UPND members think that anyone who opposes them is from the PF or the Tonse group, So they were saying it doesn't matter what the Tonse or the PF or anybody else says, we will amend the constitution. But then the court has said otherwise. And this is not the position that the president probably would have favored, because the president appeared on at least 3 platforms that I can remember. In Kasama on Women's Day. He also appeared at Mulongoshi, the Youth Day as well. He also appeared at Mulongoshi International Conference. There was an event there. And he spoke to the idea of we should amend the constitution. We should bring in proportional representation, which is, and he described it as a quota system. So based on that, who can not be appreciative of what the Constitutional Court have done or demonstrated? They've demonstrated that, yes, even though the judges of the Constitutional Court are appointed by the president, in theory, of course, it looks like it's, in practice, looks like it's difficult to have separation of powers, but they've shown us that they're an independent judiciary.
Let's go to Chadiza. We speak to Melanie Zimba. Thank you so much, Mr. Zimba, for joining us tonight. Mr. Melanie Zimba.
Hello.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on Diamond Live tonight.
Oh, thank you. Vamos Shani.
We know, Shani DC.
We know. Yeah, when we're talking about Bill 7, I want just to weigh on something that our invited guest is weighing on. The other gentleman asked him a good question. He said, has the Bill 7, if he's fixing the economy with the Bill 7, is the Bill 7 not the answer in fixing the economy? The question is yes, because you see, any seepage must be closed. Now, the issue of the Bill 7 not being consultative, what, all of us, we understand. But what we should talk is that can we begin to discuss and take this discussion even to the villages like Chadiza? The very people who are just speaking on television, have they taken time to come down and begin to explain these things? Because the issue of by-elections has been, it has been a bottleneck for all of us. Look, we had just a by-election in Lomezi. How much did government lose? We had another by-election. We have another by-election in Mufue. How many by-elections are we going to be spending? And our economy is a very small economy. So these are some of the things that we need to be answered. For instance, I'll take you to Lumezi. Lumezi, it has got a radius, Lumezi constituency, has got a radius of 240 kilometers. Now, how do you expect development to be achieved in all areas by one member of parliament? It's practically impossible. Chadiza, my district, has got only one constituency. It's very difficult for a member of parliament to visit each and every ward within 2 months. So we want these things to be done. If the process was wrong, let's go back on the drawing board. It's not time to begin to say, no, this, that, even impeachment. When we want to talk about impeachment, do we even have the numbers to impeach the president? No, let's talk issues that can help our people. And the issues that can help our people, the issues that were raised in Bill 7, those are issues that we're grappling with as a nation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zimba, for coming through. That's Chadiza District Commissioner, Mr. Malani Zimba, giving his submission on the program.
Well, I can understand where the DC is coming from Chadiza. And I appreciate him coming through and talking about these issues. I think the argument is not that everything is terrible in Bill 7. He himself talked about how people who are coming on these programs, and I hope he's referring to people from government, should go to Chadiza in the rural remote areas and talk to the people on the ground. That is not what was done in the first place. We were told that we are acting on Article 79 from the Constitution. We, government, the executive, have the powers, have the right to start this process. So our issues are not with some of the clauses or proposals in Bill 7. The issue is that the process was not transparent. The process was not consultative. So you can't tell me that we have a good product, but yet it came through a flawed process. That's not logical. And I'm sure the DC will agree with me. So the issues of we are solving a by-election, the issues of delimitation, the issues of what, of course those can be discussed, but let the people discuss them. Let the people tell us. And this is what we are asking for.
Even just with public engagement, how best do you see this being done? Because for others, they might see it as a technical. And I've seen also, I think we've got a number of people who've had these debates, whether it's online and on certain platforms, but you maybe get to realize that some of them have not taken time to actually go through the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 7 itself of 2025. And maybe they're being swayed by political opinions. Maybe they are basing their opinions on what their political party of choice is saying. So if their political party of choice is saying it should go through, they support that. If their political party of choice is saying it shouldn't go through, they oppose it. Do you think there's also been interest by members of the public genuinely and generally to look at the content of this particular bill?
Well, if I'm being very honest with you, I have to say no. I've not encountered or seen or even sensed any sort of excitement by the public or even wanting to look at what is in Bill 7 itself. Now, the question is, what is the issues with that? I don't know. We have a very poor reading culture, unfortunately, in the country, and so maybe some people don't just have the time to go through all the content that's in Bill 7. But this is where the leaders come in. This is where some people have suggested the members of parliament can go to their areas, hold public meetings, explain what's in the bill, even read it out to them, okay? And let them know what the government is proposing or the government wants to do and get their views. I'll give you a very quick example. When we were fighting Bill 10, by the way, prior to the 2021 elections, I'm one of the people that was very critical of the previous regime. I wrote so many articles against them. I appeared on Diamond TV and other platforms to speak about what was going wrong at the time. And one of the things that I remember is, if you remember the current Zambian High Commission to Australia, Last Musha, even had online, he would come online, I think, almost every night, every other night at 21 hours Zambian time, to explain Bill 10 in Bemba. You know, he would read clauses and to explain to the people what that means. Okay, so the government, if the government wanted to take an interest in this and they really wanted the people to know what's in Bill 7, they could have done initiatives like that.
But do you think how
because we're told that it's been driven by the executive, so we should do that.
How objective do you see even those processes being? Because at the same time, depending on who's speaking, they will break it down in a bias according to their opinion. So if they disagree with it, as they are explaining each particular proposal, they'll probably, if they are against it, for example, each proposal will come with the negatives of that particular proposal. Those who are proposing and feel it's a good idea will say the benefits of that particular proposal to sort of manipulate the audience and the people there. So do you think that process will be an objective one still?
Well, just before the president deferred this Bill 7 to some unknown date, whenever the government decided to revisit the issue, I think that we were told that the Minister of Justice, Madam Honorable Princess Kasone, she's been going around the provinces talking to people, talking to groups and people.
And that's what she said.
And she says they're being welcomed outside Lusaka, right?
Of course. It's only Lusaka that people were rejecting the bill.
Exactly, and that speaks to what Chimoika is saying here. So if I'm a government representative and I go out there and I'm trying to explain this Bill 7 to the people, I want to toe the line that government is trying to toe. I'll try to explain things to people in a way that they will understand from government's perspective. It may lose objectivity, but at least you provided people with an audience to understand what is going on and what's in the content of the bill. The same thing happened with the previous example that I gave with the High Commission to Australia. Of course, his line was against Bill 10, but he did provide a platform for people to understand at least what was in the bill. Those that were not interested, those that were pro-PF at the time, probably had no interest in listening to what he was saying.
So what could be the most objective approach here? Well, who should break it down to the people?
Well, unfortunately, we have people that are elected to, and this is going off by the argument from the UPND, if they're going off of Article 79 and this is driven by the executive, we're people elected by, we're government elected by the people. So the government should do it. Whether they convince the people overwhelmingly or they don't, the outcome will determine what the issues are. But Zambian people are clever, Zambian people understand issues. They may not have the time to read, but if they are told what's in the content of the bill or what is on paper, some of them will make sense of it, of whatever it is.
As we conclude, what's your call to action, Mr. Ngambi, with regards to Bill 7?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that the president has taken the right step in the right direction. There may be mixed feelings towards this action that he has taken. Of course, some people are calling for his complete withdrawal of Bill 7 and to start the process all over again. I would wish that he would do that. Secondly, the UPND government should be under no pressure whatsoever to deliver constitutional amendments or come up with a new constitution before the next election. We have seen that some of the economic indicators are now looking good for them. There are some things, the exchange rate and things that are happening that looks favorable to them. They should take advantage of that. They should work on the economy. They should do things that the people are interested to hear and learn about and support, rather than things that people are not particularly prepared to support, such as constitutional amendments.
Political analyst Aaron Ngambi, thank you so much for making time to be a part of tonight's edition of Diamond Live.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're looking at the Constitutional Court's decision to halt the process of Bill 7, but also the decision by the President to defer Bill 7. Our guest has been political analyst Aaron Ngambi. Thank you so much for being a part of tonight's edition of Diamond Live. My name is Andrew Mans.
And I'm Jibwenga Chilashe. Enjoy the rest of your night and do stay tuned to Diamond TV. Bye-bye.
Good night.